Long ago, in the rolling hills of ancient Israel, two armies stood facing each other across a valley. The air was thick with tension. On one side, the army of King Saul waited nervously. On the other side, the Philistines, fierce warriors from the coast, had come to challenge God's people. For 40 days, morning and evening, something terrifying happened. A giant emerged from the Philistine camp. His name was Goliath, and he stood over 9 feet tall. His armor gleamed like bronze in the sunlight. Every piece of metal he wore was crafted for war. His spear was as thick as a weaver's beam, and his shield was so large it took another man just to carry it before him.
Rah! I will crush you! We are under attack! To arms! Defend the hill!
Goliath would stride into the valley between the two armies and shout his challenge across the battlefield. He mocked the God of Israel. He demanded that one man come and fight him. If an Israelite could defeat him, the Philistines would become servants. But if Goliath won, Israel would serve the Philistines. His voice echoed through the valley like thunder, and every soldier who heard it felt fear grip their hearts. King Saul and his men trembled.
We must stand united against this threat.
Not one soldier, not even the mightiest warrior, dared to face the giant. They had forgotten something important. They had forgotten that the God who created the mountains and the seas was on their side. Far from the battlefield, in the town of Bethlehem, a young shepherd boy went about his daily work. His name was David. He was the youngest of 8 brothers, and while his older brothers had gone to war with King Saul, David stayed home to care for his father's sheep. David knew the hills and valleys around Bethlehem like he knew his own heartbeat. He would lead the sheep to green pastures and quiet streams. He played his harp under the starlit sky and sang songs of worship to God. David had a heart that trusted the Lord completely. The sheep were not always safe. Sometimes a lion would prowl near the flock, its eyes gleaming with hunger. Other times, a bear would emerge from the shadows, threatening the lambs. But David did not run away. With only his shepherd's staff and his faith, he defended the sheep. When a lion came, David struck it down. When a bear attacked, David rescued the lamb from its mouth. God had given him courage and strength beyond his years. One day, David's father called him in from the fields. He had a task for his youngest son. David was to take food to his brothers at the battlefront. He was to bring grain, bread, and cheese to the commanders. His father wanted to know that his sons were safe and well. David rose early the next morning, before the sun painted the sky with gold and pink. He left the sheep with another keeper and began his journey to the valley of Elah, where the armies were camped. The journey took him through rugged terrain, past olive groves and rocky paths. With each step, he carried the provisions his father had prepared. When David arrived at the camp, he found the army of Israel in the same place they had been for weeks. Fear had made them prisoners. He ran to the battle line to greet his brothers, excited to see them and hear news of the war. But then it happened. Just as David reached his brothers, the giant emerged once again.
We must stand together now, or all is lost!
He stepped forward, his massive form casting a long shadow across the valley floor.
Soldiers, we march at dawn. Stand firm, and victory will be ours.
His armor caught the light, and his voice boomed with arrogance and contempt. He hurled his insults at the God of Israel and challenged anyone to face him. David watched in amazement as the soldiers around him turned and fled. Brave men, trained warriors, ran backward in terror. The giant's words sent them scattering like leaves in the wind. David's heart stirred with something different than fear. He felt indignation. How could this uncircumcised Philistine defy the armies of the living God? David began to ask questions. He wanted to know who this giant was and why no one would face him. The soldiers told him about the reward King Saul had promised to anyone who would defeat Goliath. Great wealth, marriage to the king's daughter, and freedom for his entire family. But even with such promises, no one dared to fight.
David's oldest brother heard him asking these questions and became angry. He accused David of being prideful and leaving the sheep just to watch the battle. But David's intentions were pure. He was not seeking glory for himself. He was concerned for the honor of God's name. Word of David's boldness reached King Saul, and the young shepherd was brought before the king. Saul looked at this boy, barely grown, with sun-bronzed skin and the simple clothes of a shepherd. Saul's heart was heavy with doubt.
We cannot proceed with this plan. It will lead to ruin for us all.
How could this youth face a warrior who had trained for battle since his childhood? But David spoke with conviction. He told the king about the lion and the bear. He explained how God had delivered him from the paws of these beasts when he was protecting his father's sheep. The same God who saved him then would save him now. Goliath was just another threat to God's flock, and David was the shepherd willing to stand against him. Saul could see the faith burning in David's eyes. Finally, the king agreed. If David was determined to go, Saul would help him. The king offered David his own armor, a bronze helmet, and a coat of mail. He gave him his sword. David tried to walk in Saul's armor, but it was heavy and unfamiliar. The metal weighed him down. He had never worn such things, and they felt wrong. This was not how God had prepared him. David removed the armor piece by piece and stood before the king in his simple tunic. He would face the giant the way God had equipped him, with the tools of a shepherd and the faith of a believer. David walked toward the stream that ran through the valley. The water was clear and cold, flowing over smooth stones worn by time. He bent down and carefully chose 5 smooth stones from the stream bed. Each one fit perfectly in his hand. He placed them in his shepherd's bag, the same bag he carried when watching the sheep. He took his staff in one hand and his sling in the other. The sling was a simple weapon, just leather straps and a pouch. But David had practiced with it countless times. He had used it to protect the flock and to guide wandering sheep. In his hands, it was an instrument of God's deliverance. David walked into the valley. With each step, he moved closer to the giant who had terrorized an entire army. The morning sun was climbing higher now, warming the earth. Birds flew overhead, unaware of the moment unfolding below. 2 armies watched in breathless silence from opposite hillsides.
When Goliath saw David approaching, he was insulted. This was the champion Israel sent? A boy with a stick? The giant cursed David by his gods. He mocked him, promising to feed his flesh to the birds and the wild animals. Goliath's voice dripped with scorn and rage. But David did not waver. He called out to the giant, his young voice clear and strong. He declared that Goliath came with sword, spear, and javelin, but David came in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel. The battle was not David's to win by his own strength. This battle belonged to the Lord. David proclaimed that God would deliver Goliath into his hands, and the whole world would know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered would see that the Lord does not save by sword or spear. The Lord saves by his own power, and he would give the Philistines into Israel's hands. Goliath began to move forward, closing the distance between them. His footsteps shook the ground. His armor clanked with each stride. The moment had come. David ran toward the giant. His feet moved with purpose and speed. As he ran, he reached into his bag and pulled out one smooth stone. In one fluid motion, practiced 1,000 times on the hills of Bethlehem, David placed the stone in his sling. He whirled the sling above his head, faster and faster, until it hummed through the air. Then he released it.
The stone flew straight and true, guided by the hand of God. It struck Goliath in the forehead, the one place where his massive body was unprotected. The impact was powerful. The stone sank deep into the giant's skull. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The giant's eyes went wide with shock. His massive body swayed. Then, like a great tree cut down at its roots, Goliath fell forward. The earth trembled when he hit the ground. Dust rose around his fallen form. The giant who had terrorized 2 armies lay defeated, struck down by a shepherd boy and the power of God. David ran forward and stood over the giant. He had no sword of his own, so he took Goliath's own blade from its sheath. The sword was enormous, but David lifted it with both hands. With one mighty stroke, he defeated the giant completely, ending the threat once and for all. Silence hung over the valley for a heartbeat. Then a roar erupted from the Israelite army. Courage flooded back into their hearts. They had witnessed the impossible. God had given them victory through the most unlikely champion. The soldiers surged forward with shouts of triumph and praise. The Philistines watched their champion fall, and terror seized them. They turned and fled, running for their lives. The Israelites pursued them, no longer afraid, their faith restored by one boy's courage. The enemies of God's people were scattered, and peace returned to the land. David returned from the battle, not seeking glory for himself, but giving all praise to God. The young shepherd had shown the world a profound truth. It does not matter how big the giant is, or how impossible the situation seems. When someone stands in faith, trusting in the Lord with all their heart, God can do the extraordinary through the ordinary. The sheep on the hills of Bethlehem would soon need their shepherd again. But David's life had changed forever. This young man who trusted God completely would one day become the greatest king Israel would ever know. But that is another story. What matters most is what David knew in his heart that day. The battle belongs to the Lord. Faith is stronger than fear, and God can use anyone, no matter how small or simple they seem, to accomplish his great purposes. When giants stand before us in life, whether they are fears, troubles, or impossible challenges, we can remember David in the valley. We can remember that God is greater than any giant we face. With faith, courage, and trust in the Lord, no challenge is too great, no enemy too strong, and no situation too hopeless. The stone that brought down the giant was small, but the God who guided it is mighty. And that same God is with us today, ready to fight our battles, if only we trust him completely.